Hi class, welcome to week 5. So before I talk about discussion board 1, I wanted to talk a little bit about money and themes. One of the things I did in preparation for this week was to think about all the stories I've either read or watched where money is the central theme. To be honest, I couldn't think about many. There weren't that many stories I could think of off the top of my head that had money as the central theme. Going back to week 3, I found tons of stories about life and death that I've either read or watched. Too many to count almost. The same thing with love. But when I was thinking about week 5 and this theme, I couldn't think of many films or books that I've read or short stories about money as a central theme. And so I think that that's going to make it a really interesting topic this week because this is a theme that I believe is underexplored in literature. Maybe you agree or disagree with me if you in your experience have read many fiction books about money where that is the central theme. I'd love to know, and maybe you can email me or put that in your discussion board post or in the Ask the Instructor area or something like that, because I think one of the interesting parts of this discussion is that is this a theme that is it underrated in popular culture? And that's something to maybe kind of think about. So that was just sort of like kind of a table setter just to kind of get us talking about money. Let's get into the discussion though, because that's why we're all here, of course. All right, so I'm going to be talking about the necklace primarily for the discussion post 1. So if you haven't read it, can you please go read it first, because I'm going to be spoiling a lot of the things. And this one has a nice ending. Well, nice might not be the right word there, but it has an ending that you really want to experience. And if I ruin it for you, I don't think you're going to get the full effect of it. So I'll take a short time out. Okay, now you're back. So let's talk about the necklace. And before we do so, let's look at the discussion board prompt so that you understand what we're doing with the necklace, or the other stories too. Number 1, what do the stories say about money? So let's think about that in terms of the necklace. So what is the necklace saying about money? Well, let's run through the story just a little bit. So we have a woman. She's dissatisfied with her position in life. So going back to Vonnegut, we can see here, the author has given her something to want, right? A higher position in life. And so she is desiring something more. Her husband, who works this kind of blah type of job, gets an invitation to go to this party where she could kind of rub elbows with the elite. She doesn't want to go at first, but with some sort of tucking into, she's able to go. And before she goes, she borrows this necklace from her wealthier friend. Now, of course, since the name of the story is this necklace, we can see that this necklace is very important. It's telling us something very important that the author wants us to focus on. So now she has this necklace, it's a great night, whatever. They go home, realize the necklace is now gone. So instead of telling the friend about what happened, they decide to replace the necklace at great cost, we'll find out. Over many years that they have to repay back the debt for purchasing this replacement necklace. It takes them 10 years, in fact, and they have to get rid of their servants, which, by the way, should tell you something about their original position, right? They're living a pretty good life if they have servants, yes. I don't know about you all, but I do not have any servants at my house. I would like some, so if you would like to apply, please send your resumes, right? Anyway, so they had a good life. Now they had to get rid of the servants. They're working a lot more, and they just run themselves ragged to pay back this debt. Finally, when it is repaid, she sees her friend. Her friend does not recognize her. She is no longer the same woman. Not just because years have passed, but just because of all the stress of paying back this debt, right? When she meets the friend, it's sort of this, oh, hey, like, you were the person who did this to me in a way. And the friend's like, well, why? How did that happen? And she tells her about having to replace the necklace and what they had to do to replace the necklace. And then the friend almost casually says, oh, well, that was a fake. And that's where we kind of end things. And if you are like me, when you read this, you want to kind of reach through your computer screen and sort of like ring that woman and just like, oh my goodness, why didn't you tell me it was fake? All this time and all this energy, right? And I think that's what we're supposed to feel, of course. So we have this story, and so when we're looking at it, we can start to think about, well, what does this say about money? What is the author trying to tell us about money? And so I don't want to get too deep into what I think about this because I don't want to sort of taint your interpretation of the story and feel like you have to agree with me, but I think it is worth considering a couple questions. What life should we lead, right? That is a question I think that we should think about in order to answer what the story is saying about money. What sort of life should we lead? If we look at them before having to repay back the necklace, they live a pretty comfortable life. It might not be the best life, but it's a comfortable life. They're not running around, having to pay back this debt, right? If we look at the friend who has this costume jewelry, who's maybe putting on more, she has more than she really does, what does that say about the life we should lead? The same thing as too, after, when they're having to repay this debt, that does not sound fun the way it's depicted in the story, right? And I don't think anyone would think that would be fun in any circumstance. So that's one of the things you can maybe think about is like, well, what life does the author seem to tell us is the life we should want to live or we should live? I think that will also help us see something about money, because if we say, oh, well, it was the first life, it was the original life where they started, that's the life, right? That's the good life. And that might tell us something about money, like maybe it's not that important, or that even if you have it, right, it's really fake, that life, right? The costume jewelry. So these are things to consider. Another thing I think we should consider is how the story ends, right? Does the woman who lost the necklace and worked so hard to pay back the debt seem to be being punished in a way, right? So what I mean by that is, does this paying back the debt seem like almost like a punishment? And the reason I bring that up is that maybe the author is trying to show us something with that punishment about what would happen to us if we tried to lead this other different life where money is the focus or wealth is the focus. So these are just things to consider when you're trying to answer that first question. I know I hate answering a question with the question, but there we are. Let's go to the next one too, and I think I've already kind of touched on these, so I'm not going to go over them too much. Is there a lesson in them? Is it the same lesson? Very similar in a way. And by the way, if you're thinking about your post, these could be three paragraphs, or maybe just two if you wanted to condense the last two questions together. So if we think back to like what type of life we should lead, not only does that maybe help us sort of answer the question what this is saying about money, but it would also help us see what's the lesson in here, right? And I think you can see what I believe the lesson to be, and if you want me to be a little bit more explicit, to me it seems like the lesson is saying, live within your means, or like kind of be happy with what you got a little bit. You might agree or disagree with that, but it does seem like, she's being punished at the end of this with having to repay this debt and changing so much. So those are some things to consider. So anyway, the last thing I just want to say about the necklace, look up some words throughout this, because they might be a little unfamiliar to you, and so I don't want them to kind of go over your head. The caste system, CASTE, that's something you might kind of want to look into if you don't really know too much about it, because that might kind of color the way that you analyze the story, okay? All right. Well, I look forward to reading your responses. I think, as I said at the beginning of this video, that this is an underrepresented theme in literature, and it's one that I'm really excited to talk about. So, if you have any questions, please let me know. We're also at the halfway point in the class. I will be sending an email out shortly that will see if we could maybe come up with a time where we can both meet and talk about your grade, if that's something you would like to do. All right, I will see you on the discussion boards very soon. Bye.